Hey, good morning, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. What is going on? It is Dr. DeLon Canterbury here, the Deprescribing pharmacist and founder of GeriatRx. I hope y'all are off to an amazing week. It's a holiday today, but no rest for the week, right? So weary. So I hope y'all are doing well. I'm back. What's up? What's going on? Yeah. I hope life is treating everyone well. It is. It's a beautiful day out. Beautiful day out. And just giving people a second to pop in. But today we are diving into another lovely episode of the red pill versus the blue pill. If you haven't heard of the red pill versus the blue pill, The Matrix is indeed my favorite movie, and I consider myself to be the deprescribing Morpheus, if you will. And so I believe the future of healthcare is for us to switch more to this holistic approach and look for preventative medicine, look for ways to reduce harm. And I think our older adults are overmedicated. So how can we combat overprescribing and polypharmacy and prescribing cascades? And I believe taking the red pill can symbolize the need for us to systematically implement deprescribing across the board, especially for our geriatric adults, our aging seniors who are trying to stay at home and age in place, versus continuing along with the status quo, which is the blue pill, right? Where we just continue business as usual and don't employ some of the really basic strategies we can employ to hopefully reduce these falls, reduce adverse events, stop medication-related harm, and, make sure our loved ones aren't, suffering from any unnecessary drug interactions that I feel pharmacists are well equipped to identify with ease. However, our system doesn't quite always integrate our amazing intellect and services into healthcare. So we have to find these creative modalities, these partnerships, these dope, really unique ways to bring this holistic approach to healing in medicine. And that, my friends, is why I've created the Deprescribing Accelerator. Whether you are, a holistic wellness coach or a geriatric consultant pharmacist or nurse practitioner, if you have a future forward thinking lens of how we manage medications and how we use medications, and I believe they always will have a time and place, but we don't proactively deprescribe. It's straight up, we don't deprescribe. The literature doesn't tell us to deprescribe. It's not medically trained and taught in our professional schools, from med school to pharmacy school. The people who have prescribing power aren't always given that type of training, right? And especially when it comes to geriatric medicine, there's a need. There's a huge need, and we find more and more of our older adults, as we have, 10,000 people turning to 65 every day in this country. We need more people to be, the sentinels, the stewards of proper medication safety and use. Hence, where the brainchild of the Deprescribing Accelerator came from for me, and it's really to provide people with easy to follow steps and guidelines and algorithms, and really just retraining this mindset, this medication mindset, that we have to take a pill for every ill, right? So that's where the brainchild of the Deprescribing Accelerator came from. So for those who don't know, again, I'm Dr. DeLon Canterbury. I'm a board certified geriatric pharmacist. I created GeriatRx. We are a concierge deprescribing service. We work with businesses in aging care and aging life care, and of course, geriatric care managers, independent retirement communities. And we're all about giving people objective medication reviews and providing potential thoughts on whether, there's room for deprescribing opportunities with the intent of reducing potential harms, right? But also hopefully saving some costs for our patient and, reducing pill burden, reducing the day-to-day having to administer tons and tons of meds, and overall helping to make sure they're having a quality rest of their golden years, right? Simple as that. So I got into this space 4 years ago. Wow, 4 years ago. So we started GeriatRx 2020 April. We're going into our 5th year of business in April, but we essentially said enough was enough. I like most of us in pharmacy started off in retail, and I worked for Walgreens. Was a pharmacy manager about 5 years, 4 or 5 years, finishing up school in 2014. And yeah, for 4 years, I essentially felt like I was a part of the overprescribing problem. Then we already were on the cusp of the opioid epidemic, and would frequently dole out 360 Percocet 325s and 540 hydrocodons, no crows, and for people who are just eating these pills, right? 2-3 a day, every 2 to 3 hours, crazy amounts of heavy narcotics. And it's like, at what point are we really healing, And some of these guys were vets. Some of these guys, of course, may have had some pretty painful cancers. But most were sharing how it wasn't really touching their pain. It wasn't really managing their pain levels. So I got pretty burned out working in the traditional role, essentially hitting numbers versus healing patients. And I felt there had to be a better way. But one thing that blew my mind were how many of my clients or patients at the pharmacy were older adults, and they had, tons of drug interactions, tons of side effects, a lot of readmissions after starting new prescriptions. And I learned very quickly how little I knew about geriatric pharmacotherapy, pharmacology, whatever. So it worried me, and I decided, you know what, let's make a difference and let's go learn more about aging and understand some of the social barriers around aging, right? Like people choosing between their next meal or this prescription. And, it just shed more light on how expensive it can be to just stay in age in place in America. But they're the ones who had most of the drug interactions, most of the issues I would see. And on top of that, social barriers, and are trying to get transportation or, meal prep. So it was disheartening. It was disheartening to see. And that's where I got pretty angry with our health system. So I said, you know what? I want to learn more about this. So in 2017, that's when I got my board certification in geriatrics and pharmacotherapy, studied that stuff, took the test, passed out, and it prepped me for how much I did not know about medicine in older adults, and how you have to treat them almost as if they're children, as if they're pediatrics. And it can be scary. So like the body, doesn't act the same as a 30, 40-year-old. Your body doesn't clear medications the same. The side effect profile is completely different. There are different sensitivities, and you're just more susceptible to harm in medications that we generally think are meant to keep us young and healthy forever. right? And that's the problem. That's the problem with our medical literature is we assume everyone almost is a 30, 40-year-old healthy white male and extrapolate these guidelines to every older adult who, if you didn't know, is becoming more and more diverse culturally and racially. And you can't use this one size fits all approach in geriatric medicine. You have to personalize it. And we didn't do that in the pharmacy. I mean, we frankly don't really do that as much in the management of these people. And we're starting to see, about 80 million older adults in the next couple of decades, man. It's around the corner. And we don't even have the infrastructure to manage their care now. Like it's actually crippling at the seams now in our health system. We're seeing homelessness on the rise for people over 65. We're seeing people getting out of retirement, going back into the workforce, and still are having difficulty in the workforce due to ageism. Frankly, we don't have people able to matriculate back and make a healthy, decent living. Cost of living is already pretty egregious in the US. So imagine having almost an average income for one person to be around 32,000, little more, 36. Maybe a couple over 65 might gross, 40 something, 45, like if that, and then when we start putting race into the mix, the assets owned are even less when you're of color. So aging is costly, man. Aging is costly, and so why not at least try to mitigate some of the expenses of taking a bunch of stuff you don't even need, or may not need anymore, or saving you the headache of having another fall or having, a couple of medications mask or worsen signs of dementia to where now your quality of life is impeded, your ability to just go about your day impeded, paying your bills, your ability to get groceries, do your laundry, all because it looks like you're taking certain meds. So that's kind of the medication mindset I talk about when I created the Deprescribing Accelerator, the red pill versus the blue pill, is to get people to think differently about what all your loved ones are taking. And a lot of it starting with a couple of questions like, is your loved one on more than 5 medications, right? And how long have they been on it? Have they noticed any physical changes, any symptoms or side effects? What are their general thoughts about medicine? Are they attached to it? Is it a part of their identity? Do they feel like they have to have it for the rest of their lives? Or do they actually have thoughts about stopping? When's the last time they've had an open discussion about considering tapering off or reducing a dose of med with their primary care provider or their community pharmacist? And it's just getting people to kind of rethink what they've already been kind of brainwashed to believe, which is you need all these meds forever and ever until you die. And that's not the case usually. So I created GeriatRx pretty much giving people that peace of mind and the tools to choose where they want to go, right? Do you want to stay on these, or do you want to find other ways to heal or manage your conditions, whether it be lifestyle, nutrition, or simply looking for just duplicate therapies or drug interactions or suboptimal regimens that a pharmacist is very well equipped to easily catch, And so in 2020, we were grateful to have, our very first case. It was something I never thought I would see myself getting involved with, but we had a 70-year-old woman come to us with a med list of 36 pills, which is crazy. And she was characterized as being a walking zombie, right? So super sedated, just wasn't very responsive, was having memory problems. And her daughter ended up hiring us to do a med review, right? So we're able to find out a lot of things wrong, which you can imagine with 36 medications, right? It's kind of a big deal. And we're able to, over time, while working with their doctor or PA, we were able to come up with a plan to taper her off gradually on most of these meds, and got her back to her normal baseline self, right? Back to her normal self. We were able to help her get down to 8 prescriptions over a couple of months. And eventually, over a couple of years, she is now just on 3 prescriptions. Okay. So the dark side to this story, which I may have shared in previous lives, is this woman was about to be involuntarily committed into a memory care unit because the family thought she had dementia, and they just labeled it as dementia. But she really had severe anticholinergic toxicity and multiple interacting agents that led to this decline in her well-being and quality of life. So thank God the daughter hired us, because she was the only one in the family who suspected it was the medicines versus this natural decline or her age, which is problematic. So we were able to use our deprescribing action plan and present that to a jury, to a court, and show and serve as a medical expert that she was being overprescribed. There was a bunch of prescribing cascades, and she does not have to be forced into a nursing home if we start tapering off some of these problematic agents. So we're talking, Seroquel, lorazepam. She had oxybutynin on board. She also had low-dose Dilaudid, PRN, or as needed. She had Tylenol PM. What else she had? She had some other incontinence medications, a couple blood pressure meds. She had Keppra for no reason. Apparently, she had an event, I don't know, mini stroke 15 years ago, but we couldn't find any other like diagnoses or related causes or even recurrences since. So we were able to get that taken off eventually. Yeah. And then like a bunch of allergy medications, right? So just the anticholinergic burden is through the roof. So in doing this review, this med review, we were able to give our testimony and serve as a medical expert, and then eventually prove that it was the drug interactions. And so the family was going to involuntarily commit her into a memory care unit, but they ended up not having to do that. So our testimony doing this work showed and proved that it was the meds and not her aging decline. And well, we ended up saving her life, right? We ended up keeping her at home. We ended up helping her get better with her provider. And to this day, she's doing fantastic. So that was our very, very first client in creating this. And so if I, as a one-man show at the time, with a concierge practice, right, did this for a fairly minimal cost. Do y'all know how much a memory care unit costs these days? Depending on where you are, we're talking, 7 to 12K a month, even more in the more populous cities like Cali and New York. It's super expensive, so that's how much you would pay out a month. And for a fraction of that cost, we were able to do a med review, a deprescribing action plan, work with the doctors, and keep the family from forcing him into that memory care unit. So easily saved this family well over $500,000 over the past 4 or 5 years. So, that was a blessing. And mind you, I almost didn't do it. I almost didn't even want to take on the case because I was afraid. I didn't want to go to court. I wasn't used to being cross-examined. I didn't want to. I was a little scared. I was a little nervous. But I prayed on it, and something told me to just help the family. So I changed my mind after saying no initially, and say, you know what, I'm going to help, and God, I'm glad I did. That solidified my calling when they called and just said, yo, we won the case. I was like, oh, this is sick. This is great. This is This is why pharmacists do what we do. This is why a lot of us got into this profession. So the fire that was once gone from my previous position all came back at once, and that was the sign that it was time to create this concierge objective deprescribing service to give people another route to consider and give people a bit of hope, a glimmer of hope. Hey, good morning, Mike. How you doing, man? Just give people a chance to see that pharmacists are way more than just dispensers. We work. We're advocates. We're motivators. We're coaches. We're confidants. Like we can do so much, and then our skill sets are so damn versatile. It's like they can integrate almost anywhere in healthcare and aging and business, whether it could be from a cost saving standpoint, or whether it's coaching clients, or whether it's creating policy around deprescribing. And I think that's why I feel compelled to share more on why this movement is going to take more than just pharmacists. We are the ish, right? We got that down, but how do we integrate this in a way where we're moving prescribing practice, where we're training NPs, we're training PAs, we're working with the doctors, we're using team-based approaches to systematically employ harm reduction from prescribing. And it shouldn't be this, I say this, and then you go 3 steps down the pipeline and it comes to the pharmacy and it's like, dang, this may not work. This is going to be wrong, or there's an allergy, or there's something. It's like, let's just do it all together at first. And then let's holistically look at what the patient's needs are. And then let's employ lifestyle and medicine first. Let's employ what the patient wants to do first, right? Have we even include them into the care management plan? Like, have we even brought in the caregiver? Have we discussed any potential barriers with the literacy or administration, or just cultural beliefs around the medicine? Like, have we even touched on any of those things? And a lot of times we don't. A lot of times we don't have that. We just kind of say, "Is do what I say. Here's what the guidelines say, and you're on this now for 10 years." And there's no game plan on when to reassess, or when to stop, or when's enough is enough, or what can we do to employ any other non-pharmacological approach before we jump to a life sentence, right? And yeah, that's why I created this business, because I got so freaking tired of just following what the guidelines say. And the guidelines aren't right half the time when we're talking about an 88-year-old adult. They're not. It doesn't apply because we don't have the data. We don't have data. So we extrapolate from old data and use this approach for all older adults. And I'm tired of that. I'm tired of that being the reason why I see 20 medication long lists, 30 medication long lists. And these are in skilled nursing facilities. These are in ALFs. These are in long-term care centers. These are in settings that you would imagine would have people saying, "What the hell is going on here?" And there's so many brilliant consultant pharmacists who are in those trenches doing the damn thing, doing the work. But it's like you're hoping that the doctor agrees to the gradual dose reduction, right? You're hoping they take that recommendation, where it's like, just do it. just do it. Do it together. Like, why do we have to make it a territorial, egotistical battle of who has this authority, where it's, if there's a identified harm, then shouldn't we be doing everything in our Hippocratic oath to do no harm, like to identify the harm and then mitigate the harm and reduce the harm? But no, we perpetuate and document and say no med changes needed. And it's not enough, bro. It's not enough. It's not enough. And I think a lot of us consultant pharmacists are fed up too. I mean, I'm by trade. I never was a consultant pharmacist, but I empathize. I'm a concierge pharmacist. But you're doing all these awesome audits for X number of beds of facility, and you're paid per bed. I mean, there's a point where you're not given the holistic all that we want to give to truly deprescribe. And to me, that is something that that's something that is a disservice, man. That's a disservice to the taxpayers. It's a disservice. It's a disservice to the damn resident who's paying an arm and a leg for someone to get better, yet we're slowly killing them with these obvious preventable drug interactions and reducing quality of life. Needless to say, man, how can we excuse $500 billion wasted on medication-related harm every year? Like, how can we excuse 750 older adults, 65 and up, going to the ER every day because of a medicine? Like, why do we have to hope that your loved one is being seen by someone who is like a geriatrician and actively wants you on as little meds as possible? You have to hope that happens, or you have to hope you have a proactive NP or PA who thinks the same way. And you have to hope that you don't have 10 different specialists who think that their organ is the most important. So we're going to do everything for that organ, but not holistically see the entire picture. You mean times you're going to see cardiologists and nephrologists argue about, it's a trope, but it's like, it's so common. Of which organ is most important, and what ends up happening is the ego of medicine kills patients, and it kills older adults the most, to me, which is where this fire came from, to advocate for older adults and seniors. And so thus the creation of the Deprescribing Accelerator. So I had that one patient. Then that was the first Kickstarter. Then I had another patient in 2 months, younger adult, dialysis patient, diabetes, obese, insulin resistant, sleep apnea, what else? Gout, also had social barriers, some, was battling homelessness. So we had a number of issues come up, right? And even so, even if I couldn't solve everything, we were still able to get this man eligible for Medicare and Medicaid. He was only receiving one. So we were able to advise him to get that dual eligibility so all of his meds could be covered for free, which was one of the biggest wins we had. We were able to get him involved with the local food bank. So we had diabetic-friendly foods delivered to his house. We were able to reduce 2 or 3 pills because he was so non-compliant, if you want to term that. He didn't really have a good understanding of why he was taking certain things. And once he had a decent understanding, we realized the meds he was taking when he actually took all of them were working too well. So we were able to peel back some of the diuretics and some of the other diabetes meds because his numbers look great. Now, the consistency afterwards was indeed another issue that came up, but there were a lot of lessons here to learn. And I did, experience some setbacks, right? There were some times where I was like, dang, am I really going to help this guy? Like, what we taught worked for a few months, but it wasn't sticking like long term. And I learned there wasn't an initial buy-in for themselves. There wasn't an initial like, I really want to do this. It ended up being a family member who was pushing him to do this, but the patient themselves was like, I want to do what I want to do. So it was a it was a bit of a setback for me because I'm thinking, we come in, we make an intervention. You want to see the numbers, you want to see the results, you want to see people get better with less. And it taught me, that it's not going to always be that way. And so if you don't have that initial want or care, or it's okay to make mistakes and lose interest and go back up and down, but there was just a baseline. And that was something that I took personally, but luckily his provider and I got cool over it, and he taught me some lessons. And it was like, look, Delon, you can't do everything. You can do everything in your power, but you just can't make everything happen the way you want to in medicine. And it was a valuable lesson. It was a valuable lesson because I was starting to beat myself up. Like, well, dang, was there a better way I could have communicated, or what did I miss? Like, why wasn't it resonating? Needless to say, he got better, then he got worse, then he got a little better. And he's still dealing with the same issues today. And it wasn't anything I really could have done. And it sucked. I don't like taking losses, right? If I'm going to touch a life, I want to touch a life. And it's something that sucked. It just sucked. But I'm grateful for the camaraderie of his primary care provider and showing me the lens of a medical doctor's life. Like, it's like, you really can't say them all. There's a point where you hit, the patient has to have that initial buy-in to want to change. And it's like, I know how stubborn I am. Like, I don't easily change if I hear a conflicting point of view. So I get it. I'm a stubborn dude. But it was a valuable lesson, man. So needless to say, in working with some of these dope clients and these patients, there's a lesson in each person. But ultimately, I decided that if I'm able to have this impact as one man, right? What was it? Damn, I was 31 years old when I started this business. 31. If I had, this is my first year, if I'm having, 2 lives touched in a way that have substantially helped them for the better, imagine a force of deprescribers, a force of deprescribing advocates, a force of aging care professionals partnering with geriatric pharmacists or concierge pharmacists or holistic healers or wellness practitioners or interdisciplinary specialists who see this like-minded lens, right, on less is more, and still get the same results. Like, damn, imagine if our health system actually did that instead of lying to you that we're doing that. Yeah. Carrie, good point. Carrie made an excellent point about sometimes we can make patients codependent on the drugs when they work, and it's true. Like, I mean, come on, like, let's look at let's look at diabetes, right? How many of your patients say it? Oh man, I'm gonna go eat out tonight. I'm gonna get me this awesome meal, and I'm just gonna up the ante on that insulin, and it's like, all right, boom, I'm in. It's like we're seeing it as an escape button versus the root issue, which is the lifestyle and the behavioral change that needs to take place. So you can't underestimate the behavioral change. And why that lesson with our second client resonates so much is that it happened again. It happened again with a later client this past year whose identity was actually psychologically attached to the medicine. Okay, the woman had the need to take the medicine because it was her form of having control and power in a situation where she maybe felt powerless or just out of wits. So that was interesting because it took some dancing, or if you will, catering of our language about her med management process. Um, because us taking away her meds was like taking away her power. And we don't want to take away autonomy in an older woman's adult. We don't want to make them feel like they don't have that power. So this woman came to us with 18 prescriptions, mind you. After we were done over 6 months, she was down to 5. It's fantastic, which is, my sweet number is 5 or less. But ultimately, it took a couple months for us to get to the point where we can say, hey, let us take control of your, no. Let us take the burden of managing your meds off of your plate. Like, how would it feel for you to take less? Do you feel like that would actually help you? Do you feel like you'll have an easier day? Do you feel like they're actually working? Like, we had to use different verbiage to get her to essentially agree to the plan of letting us take off of her plate. And she loved the idea of having us take things off of her plate. She felt she was too, busy around her days. And so working with her care manager and her caregiver at home, we were able to organize the meds. We were able to, of course, enact the Deprescribing plan with her providers. And we were able to shave off as much meds as possible. And it was awesome. Got her down to 5 over the course of 6 months. It was great. It was a great win. And she was doing better. But ultimately, I created this Deprescribing Accelerator to give people the tools, particularly pharmacists, sure, especially geriatric consultant ones who essentially have the background to do it. But I want to give people the chance to see that there is a framework you can follow, even though it's going to be personalized by the person you're dealing with. There's a general framework you can use to advocate for deprescribing, to implement it, to monetize it especially, and to standardize it repeatedly. It doesn't have to just stop with one patient. What you realize is that one patient may be touched, but now the family members involved are looking for ways to maybe deprescribe themselves, or have another loved one or auntie or someone who also needs the service. And to me, it's just general education, man. It's general education. And so we've got to shift away from this fee-for-service crap. We also have to shy away from these fake value-based service metrics that are really not as genuine as they sound. And I used to be all about saying value-based care, but it's a buzzword. It's really just a buzzword, and it's becoming more costly, and it's meant to sound good on your insurance plans. But are we really doing that? I don't know. I doubt it. But we need to make our patients our own deprescribing advocates. And frankly, we don't have so many gaps in the health system. It's going to have to fall on the caregiver or the patient to make deprescribing happen. Like, just the way the system's set up, you're not going to find concierge pharmacists like that. You're not going to find deprescribing advocates like that. So I'm saying, you know what? What if I create a program that gives people the clinical background and the business acumen to develop their own concierge deprescribing practice? And what if you have that same background if you're a nurse, if you're a geriatrician, if you're a PA, if you're an NP, if you're a social worker, and of course, if you're a pharmacist? And so I did. So I created a program where you can take this for an entire year. You get 15 hours of live CE. You get the clinical tools to understand deprescribing on a geriatric focused lens. Of course, it's all geriatric focused. And you get this blueprint on how to make your own business out of it, just like I did. Is it easy? No. this is not an easy class. I'm gonna be honest. This is not an easy class. Like my students are like, DeLon, this is not easy. I'm like, yeah, it's not. Especially when you don't have a guide. And when I, like myself, I didn't have a guide teaching me how to do this. It was literally doing it and studying the literature and researching the world of literature around deprescribing, from Canada to Australia to Denmark to Africa, South America. I've studied all the damn literature. Okay, I'm not going to say I know it all. I'm not going to spit p-values and confidence intervals at you. I'm not. I know the big name stuff, but in doing this class, I study this stuff and I implement it and I do it. And I believe in it. And I believe if we don't standardize it, then who else is going to start it? Who else is going to do it? And this is why I love like the work that the John A. Hartford Foundation does, the Woodruff Foundation, the Laney Institute in Maryland, UC San Diego, San Fran, the IHI, Deprescribing Network, like all these awesome people fund studies to deprescribe and provide patient-centric, dementia-friendly, like caregiver-focused type of intervention so people can finally get some type of guidance on stopping overprescribing. Okay? It's a pandemic. Overprescribing is a pandemic. It's a problem. It's a pandemic. We don't talk about it enough because we're in a country that makes billions off of you being on a medication or having a Band-Aid as an approach to heal. And now you're on it for life instead of putting actual grocery stores in communities that need it. So it begins with you, Carrie. You ask, where do we start with this movement? Like it literally starts with you. It literally starts with you showing up in your community, in your churches, in your youth groups, in your PTA, in synagogues, in your mosque. It starts where the community is. It starts where the need is. It starts with the nursing home up the street. It starts with, you know, the foundations, the charities. It starts with nonprofits. You can start anywhere. Because when I'm in these rooms, I'm usually the only pharmacist. That's enough said. So leverage that and just educate, because that's all we do anyway, is educate. Like no matter what discipline of healthcare you're in, you're generally an educator. You're a teacher and an educator, a pharmacist, nurse, whatever. You're generally someone having to educate someone on something. So why not do it in a way that's lasting and I mean, knowledge is power, man. That's the start of it all, but that's how things get done. And so I said, let me educate. So I essentially created, yeah, you know, Carrie, you are spot on. Like that's why I'm so proud of, you know, I got to shout out Gina Quinn, who's the founder of Perfecting Pediatrics or Perfecting Peds. But yeah, these teenagers are on tons of meds. Like polypharmacy is crazy. There's a overdiagnoses of damn near every mental health thing under the sun. So now they're on 5 different psych meds. They don't have a genetic test. They're just trying stuff. And now you're doomed for the rest of your life to be on all these neurotransmitter modulating drugs. And it ends up frying your brain chemistry. And it takes years to undo it. So and they're the ones who are going to be our future aging adults. So I don't want to deprescribe 10 different psych meds. That stuff ain't fun. That's not easy. I'll try, but that stuff is not fun. I don't want a lawsuit because you trip out on one missed dose. Like I don't want that. Nobody wants that. So it's difficult. And that's why it's like we're setting people up, especially when I hear and see 20-year-olds on all these psychoactive agents. But all hope isn't lost, man. So despite the challenges of, being a pharmacist, not having billable provider status, realizing that I don't want to doom myself to just bill incident to a doctor for the rest of my life. It doesn't give me the lifestyle I want. I want my own thing. So I created my own thing. Frankly, thank God. That's all God's blessings. I'm not going to say it was all me. It takes a village. Definitely my parents who've supported, my granny Mildred, who's the impetus behind my Deprescribing advocacy, um, and the people who've trusted me to take care of them over the past few years have helped me get to this point. But I didn't want to work in tandem with another health office. It'd be like I'm going back to my old job. I said, let me work from home if I can, or let me work remote. And that's one thing COVID helped to bring about, was the need or the ease of just doing things virtually. And so I did. And I want every pharmacist to have that hope too, every nurse to have that hope too, every provider to have that feasibility too, flexibility. Like, I don't I don't think we have to be in a pharmacy to provide stellar service. So it wasn't easy, uh, especially with all those barriers I had to overcome. And even, of course, the biggest barrier, our own mindsets, right? Our limiting beliefs, our, the not having someone to show you how to do it. The Yeah, you're gonna be stuck with your passion and your thoughts and no money, and you have to realize, how do you monetize that pretty quickly in business, as the point of business is to make a profit. Um, and despite the limiting beliefs, the mindset shifts, the can I truly communicate my concerns to another provider without feeling like I'm attacking them, those little mental blocks, you realize, a lot of it stems from us. And if you don't have your passion down, if you don't have the alignment of what you've been given in your gift to heal and educate and teach, it you're just going to burn out and you're going to crash. So having that alignment and having a plan and to act on it and implement it is key to success. So needless to say, a lot of lessons got me to this point, right? Now we're at a stage where we're teaching our alumni how to create their own business, sure, but how to sustainably work with other aging care providers. How do we integrate your services into retirement communities? How do we create group-based coaching within your spheres of genius? How do we get involved with churches? How do we get involved with faith-based communities? How do we get involved with your local community center or your adult daycare center? How do you implement deprescribing workshops at health fairs and conferences, right? How do you spot the signs of overprescribing, right? How do we know what that means? Like, one of the first rules is stop just chalking everything up to aging. I say it again, stop chalking everything up to aging. We got to address ageism in medicine. We got to address ageism in our own biases. And so, oh, he's forgetting more. He must be just getting old. No, no. If you're seeing significant changes of someone remembering things, then my friend, we have a problem. And that's not something you just forget. Or sorry, no pun intended there. That's not something you just brush off. That's forgetfulness. You want to address that. That's not a normal sign of aging. Uh, he's sleeping all day. Okay, 10 hours, 12 hours. Is it low energy? Are they depressed? Are they having any social engagement? Are they eating? What's their environment like? Are they stressed? Have they been watching too much of the news? Are they worried about COVID? Are they scared? You see, we gotta stop thinking it's aging. Frequent urination, In the world of pharmacy, we always think medications first, right? If there's anything wrong with someone, we assume it's a medication causing the problem first. So have we ruled out if it's a medication related problem? Caregivers know this as much as a pharmacist. That's why I'm like, the caregiver is just as important, especially if they're actively doing the day-to-day of a person's life and need. Like, they're going to know and see the differences because they're the ones there to clean up and manage it. So why aren't we empowering more of our caregivers for less meds, you know? So if we're seeing changes in fatigue, in energy, in changes in cognition, depression, lack of pleasure, um, changed affect, depression, any pain, constipation, diarrhea, confusion, falls, dehydration, mood swings. First, think medications. First, think the medications. And so until we rule out it's a medication causing those issues in anyone 65 and up, then we can maybe start thinking of some other social issues, if that, right? But you got to talk to people to know the timeline. You got to know the timeline. And so a lot of my work is solving a puzzle backwards. It's literally what's presenting. Oh, they've had to use their Depends more frequently than usual. Oh, you've noticed that they've had to go to the bathroom every hour when you do your in-home visits. Oh, okay. What are they on? Any diuretics? No. Okay. Uh, any diabetic medications? Oh, you're on Jardiance. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it definitely helps with sugars. But you know how it helps with sugars? By increasing the urinary output of sugars. Okay. So you're an 80-year-old and you have cognitive impairment, you have falls, you have a walker, you're waking up in the middle of the night because you have urinary urgency. So you've had this for how long? A couple of years? Okay. One medication. You know how much Depends costs? And your falls risk because of all these factors. So if you were to fall, you know what the average cost of a fall is? ER visit, $30K, 30 to 60K. And then per cost per outpatient, I don't know, 4 or 5K each. So if we stop the Jardiance or switch to another diabetic med that doesn't cause you to have urinary incontinence and urgency, are we not potentially stopping a harmful adverse event from happening? Yeah, we are. Of course, I'm going to want to question what the diabetic readings are, A1C, sugars, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. But all because Jardiance is the newest, coolest thing doesn't mean you need to be on it for an 88-year-old. We could try something else, and especially if it's worsening his falls risk. So I don't know if y'all know this, but every second in the US, someone falls. Every second, someone falls who's 65 and up. So I think that's, 36 million falls a year or so. I forget the number. About 25% have some type of fracture from that, 20%. And you know what happens when you have a fracture? Your mortality goes up, my friends. So I think that's the simple way of working backwards with a presenting symptom, honing in on the high-risk medication that could be causing the issue, and then now making an intervention with the doctor's permission to mitigate potential harm. In this case, falls risk and dehydration and cognitive impairment, because they all tie in. The more dehydrated you are, the more cognitive impairment you may have. Thanks to Sanjay Gupta. He actually discusses that in his work. So, ladies and gents, this is a long-winded way of saying you all can be deprescribing advocates. Ask questions. And I believe all aging care businesses, all independent living communities, all SNFs and ALFs, I believe every older business-based physical therapist, occupational therapist, transition of care specialist, placement management specialist, social worker, intake coordinator, DON, medical director, man, every damn body needs a deprescribing advocate. The health system needs it. The insurance companies need it. The patients need it. The caregivers need it. And frankly, we love it. We love deprescribing. Like, who doesn't? Like, it's one of the best parts of my job. So I want to thank y'all for tuning in and staying with me for this jam-packed hour of not just my why behind all of this, but how I envision the future of aging being. And it has to standardize and require deprescribing. Carrie, it can be difficult to convince doctors, but there are enough doctors that are on board. And when you do it in a way that doesn't show like you're trying to attack in a way, or put blame, I do it in a way where I'm framing the current pressing issue. And frankly, my world is the patient always has the autonomy to do what they want, even if it's against the doctor's will. Now, I'm not going to like pull that card to every little thing. But my point is, when you're able to present a side effect that is causing harm in a very clear and casual causal relationship from a med, then now the onus is on the doctor. So if there is harm that's done, and I think they're more likely to say, let's change something before a harm is actually done. So I would say it's reframing this he say, she say to here's what's really going on. Here's what I have found. How would you feel if we did a taper or a drug holiday or a trial, and see if the patient gets better? And if they do get better, we can revisit. Or there are ways to go around that. And frankly, a lot of times providers are grateful for deprescribing suggestions. But to me, I'd say do it piecemeal, do it, step at a time. Don't, it's not a blame game. It's simply giving the perspective that we as pharmacists have already given. And don't get me wrong, you're going to have your egos. You're going to have people who will never be assuaged or change their minds. And that's fine. But ultimately, my job is to be objective and give patients like the tea on what is happening. So don't deflate your gift. And it's not all the providers' faults either. It's a system issue, man. Providers are just doing what they're trained to do, and they do it well. They do it very well. It's just we have a system that doesn't really incentivize this methodology. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the love. I definitely appreciate everyone's insights and amazing engagement. Tune in later on tomorrow. We'll have some more intel on the world of deprescribing. But yes, we do start another cohort. My goodness, this is our 6th cohort. 6. I can't believe it. We start February 29th. We will usually meet once a week on Thursdays. We've got an amazing group right now. I'm super stoked for them. Really diverse team. We've got a geriatrician, we've got a pharmacy owner, and we've have an advanced nurse specialist who specializes in psych disorders and aging. And we've got another who's also on the fence, so we'll see. But I am so psyched. I love having interdisciplinary teams on board. So yeah, I can't wait to get things rocking and rolling. Check y'all out. But I think we made some good headway. So if you can, if you want to learn more, we do have 1 seat left. So apply in the link on my homepage and in the comments to get in on this cohort. Or if you want to join our next cohort, we'll likely have another in the fall. But yeah, hope this was enlightening. And thank you for tuning in to the Red Pill versus the Blue Pill. This is Dr. DeLon Canterbury, the Deprescribing pharmacist. You guys take care.